Okay, hello again. So we're going to go now through the answers to the exercises from lecture 4. Okay, so what have we got here? 3 exercises. First exercise is about sentence structure. So as you can see, we've got some sentences here which you're supposed to divide into sentence elements: subject, verb, complement, object, adverbial. Okay, so here I don't even ask you about different types of objects. I don't ask you about different types of complements. It's enough to divide them into these 5 main parts. So what I would normally ask you to do in a test or in an exam is to put a slash in between, as you can see in the example. So in the example, we've got fast cars go quickly, right? So we've got fast cars is a subject, slash go is the verb, slash quickly is an adverbial. Slash is in between and the letters at the top. Okay. And secondly, the second example, I like roast chicken cold. So I is a subject, like is the verb, roast chicken is the object, and cold here is a description of roast chicken, right? So it's this is a compliment. Okay. So hopefully you've already looked at these, and I think that most of them are quite easy if you understand the difference between objects and complements. If you don't, then you might have problems. So sentence number 1, modern computers have many programs. Now the important thing to understand, of course, is that each individual part of the sentence can be more than one word. So modern computers, all of that is the subject. Okay. Modern computers. Modern is not a complement just because it's describing computers, because it's part of the subject. Modern computers, that's the subject. Have is a verb, and what they have is many programs. So many programs is the object. Okay, so it's subject, verb, object, simple English sentence. Okay, only 3 parts to it. In the second example, here we must change all the programs tomorrow. Okay, so here we've got we as a subject, and then obviously we've got a verb form. But have we got 2 verbs here? Well, no. As far as the sentence is concerned, must change is 1 verb structure, okay, with an auxiliary, which is must, and change, which is the lexical verb. So we'll have a slash here. We as the subject then must change as the verb, okay? And then we've got all the programs. Now all the programs, all of that together will be the object, okay? That's what we must change. Slash will come here, okay? And then of course tomorrow is an adverbial. All right. Sentence number 3. Tomorrow will be a holiday here. Now here, tomorrow over here was an adverbial. Down here in number 3, tomorrow is not an adverbial. We've got tomorrow will be. Okay. Will be is obviously the verb form. Tomorrow is the subject of the verb will be. Okay. Tomorrow here is a noun. That's beside the point as far as sentence structure is concerned. Well, it's important, but it's we're not looking at parts of speech. We're looking at parts of sentence. So tomorrow is the subject, S. Will be is the verb. A holiday. Okay. Now the first thing everybody else says, oh, this is an object, but of course this is not an object because this is the verb to be, and the verb to be doesn't take objects. It takes complements, right? As we talked about in the last part of the lecture. Okay, so we've got tomorrow subject will be verb, a holiday complement. Here, this answers the question where, so this is an adverbial. Okay. Number 4, these bookshelves are becoming very popular. So these bookshelves, that's the subject, are becoming. Okay, are becoming, both parts, that's the verb. What are they becoming? They are becoming very popular. And again, become does not take objects, it takes complements. Okay, so we'll have these bookshelves as the subject, are becoming as the verb, and very popular as a complement. Okay. Number 5, we read too many books too quickly. So obviously we've got we as the subject, read as the verb, and then what do we read? We read too many books. Okay, so too many books, all of that is the object of the verb read, too many books, and then too quickly, that's the adverbial. So you'll notice that too here can be part of either section, it doesn't matter. We can have too as in too many, that's part of a noun form, which is the object, and too quickly, here it's describing an adverb. Okay, so it's part of the adverbial. Number 6, the young man grew restless in his mother's house. Okay, so again, the young man, there's 3 parts to this noun phrase, but all of that will be the subject of the verb grew. Okay, that's the verb. And then we've got restless in his mother's house. So restless, okay, this is an adjective, right? Grew here means became. So restless here is a complement. It's the subject complement. It describes the young man, right? He became restless, what it means. And in his mother's house, that tells us where something happened. So that is an adverbial. Okay. Sentence number 7, he found his mother greedy. Okay, this is slightly different. So he, of course, is the subject. Found is the verb. And then we've got his mother greedy. So his mother, okay, she is the object of the verb found. Okay, but greedy is the description of the mother. So greedy here is a complement. It's an object complement. So here we have subject, verb, object, complement. Okay, so it's not a question of having either an object or a complement. Sometimes we have both. Okay, and the last one, she had found him a beautiful young wife. Okay, so again we've got the same verb, found. Here we've got she as the subject, had found, okay, both parts as the verb, him, a beautiful young wife. So what does this mean? She had found a beautiful young wife for him, right? Not that she had, a beautiful young wife isn't a description of him, so it's not that this is an object and this is a complement describing it. These are both objects, right? What she actually found is a beautiful young wife, so that would be the direct object. She found it for him, or found her for him. So him here is an indirect object. So in this exercise, what we've actually got is subject, verb, object, object. Okay? And again, don't get confused into thinking that things like beautiful and young are somehow complements because they describe wife. They are part of the same noun phrase. Okay? So all of that is the direct object of the verb form had found. Okay? Okay, if there are any questions about that, you'll have to let me know. The next exercise is a very long one. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, because there's a lot to get through. Most of them are sort of in pairs to some extent to compare things. So here we're looking at objects and complements, and we will make a difference between direct objects and indirect objects, and between subject complements and object complements. Okay. So will someone get a doctor? Okay, so we've got here a verb get, which requires an object, right? We get something, okay? So here a doctor will be the direct object of the verb get, all right? That should be simple. On the other hand, in number 2, George became a famous doctor. Okay, we've got the verb become here, which doesn't take objects, right? It takes complements. So here we've got a subject, George, and a famous doctor comes to describe George, so a famous doctor is a subject complement. Okay. Number 3, do you call yourself a doctor? Okay, so now This is a well-known expression in English. When you doubt somebody, you say, "Call yourself a doctor? You're not good. You're a bad teacher. You call yourself a teacher?" This is a kind of said expression. Okay. Now, what we need to be careful about here is we need to not get confused with the too much about the meaning, but only looking at the grammar. So this you and yourself obviously refer to the same person, and the doctor, it all refers to the same individual. But that's not important for us. What's important for us is that you, okay, is a subject, call is a verb, yourself, okay, whom you call something. So this is the object of the verb call, right? It's a direct object of the verb call, okay? And then a doctor is a description of yourself. So call in this meaning takes what usually it takes an object, but it will usually also provoke an object complement. So yourself is a direct object, and a doctor is an object complement. Okay, it's a description of the yourself. Okay, we'll see also how call works in the next two, right? So we've got may I call you Jenny and may I call you a taxi. Okay, there are various jokes that you can make in English over this, right? You can say to somebody, may I call you a taxi? And they say, no, my name is something else, right? So here there's a difference between calling somebody something, like saying that's their name, and calling a thing for somebody, right? So in the first example, may I call you Jenny? So we've got call and then it's followed by you. This is a direct object. And Jenny is the description of you. So Jenny, as in the example before, is an object complement. May I call you a taxi means may I call a taxi for you? Okay, so this is ditransitive. There are two objects. So a taxi is a direct object and you an indirect object. Okay, 6 again with call me anything you like. This is the type of verb form which I mentioned in the lecture earlier that doesn't take a subject, right? Because when we're giving somebody orders or instructions, we don't give subjects in English. It's the only time. So when we say call me, we mean you. You is the understood subject here. You may call me. So me here would be an object. So since me is an object, and anything you like is what you're going to call me, anything you like is a complement to the object complement. Okay. Okay. Then we've got a couple about being cold and being warm. Number 7, it's so cold I can't get warm. Number 8, I can't get my hands warm. So it's so cold. The verb here is, yes, is s, even though it's only one little bit. That's the verb. The verb is to be. It is so cold. If the verb is to be, then what comes after it must be a complement. So cold is a subject complement. It describes it. I can't get warm. Okay. This is a slightly more, I don't know, maybe it's more complicated for you. I can't get warm. Get something when it's an adjective is the same as become, right? I can't become warm is what's meant here. So this warm is a description of I. Of course, it's a negative description, so we're actually saying that I lack this thing, but still, warm is also a subject complement, okay? It's a description of the I, in the same way that the so cold is a description of the it. So they are both subject complements, so cold and warm. In number 8, I can't get my hands warm, however, it's a little different because the subject here is I, and my hands are an object, a direct object of the verb get. Warm is a description of my hands, so warm is an object complement. Okay. Number 9, keep quiet, keep those children quiet. So again, here we've got instructions or orders. So the subject in both cases is you, whoever you may be that I'm talking to. So when I say keep quiet, you keep quiet, okay, what I'm saying is the same as be quiet, Okay, so it's the same as using the verb to be. So quiet here is actually a subject complement, right? It's a description of you. I want you to be quiet. Okay. Keep those children quiet. I'm saying that you should keep those children quiet. Okay. So those children here become an object, a direct object of the verb keep. Quiet is a description of them, so quiet is an object complement. Okay. Number 10. Can't you give them something to keep them quiet? You give them something, so you give something to them. So something here will be a direct object, them will be an indirect object. Okay. Something to keep them quiet. Okay. So again, the second them, okay, this is the object of this infinite verb form to keep. So infinite verb forms, which did we talk about that in the lecture? I don't know if we did. Infinite verb forms are verb forms which have neither person nor time, so things like to keep, but they can still have objects. And here we have a direct object of the verb to keep. Okay. A couple of examples with madness. So number 11, the man was slowly going mad. That means the man was becoming mad, right? So this is a description of the man. The man is clearly the subject. So mad here is a subject complement. His mother was driving him mad. Okay, so here the subject is the mother. So the complement does not refer to her. So him is the direct object of driving, and mad is an object complement. The driver turned the corner too quickly, and the weather is turning warmer. So we've got two uses of the verb turn. The driver turned the corner too quickly. The corner here is simply the direct object of the verb turn. Okay. When we say the weather is turning warmer, this is a use of turning to mean becoming. Okay, so basically we're saying the weather is becoming warmer, therefore warmer is a description of the weather, it's a subject complement. Similarly, the hot weather turned all the milk sour. Okay, so again, turned here is made something, become something, right? But here is not the hot weather that turned itself. So the hot weather is the subject. Turn here needs an object. All the milk is the direct object of the verb turned, and sour is a description of the direct object, so it is an object complement. The young man grew depressed. Grew here means became, so depressed is a description of the young man. It's a subject complement. He grew his hair long. His hair is the direct object of grew. It was long, so long is the object complement. Okay. He had made a great mistake. Make, typical verb, takes typical object. So a great mistake is a direct object. But then we have two other examples which are a little more interesting with made. His wife made him her servant. Okay. Now this does not mean his wife made her servant for him. That wouldn't really make any sense, just to make a servant for somebody. So it is not ditransitive, although it has that kind of form. What it means is that his wife turned him into her servant. Okay, so him is the direct object of made, and her servant is what he becomes, what the object becomes. Therefore, it's a description of the object, so it's an object complement. Okay, and the last one, his wife sometimes made him curry. So here, his wife made curry for him. So this is a ditransitive sentence, ditransitive use of made. Okay, so what we have here is she made curry. Curry is the direct object. That's what she actually made. And him is the indirect object. Okay. It is possible, theoretically, to understand this sentence in a different way, to understand him as the object and curry as a complement to the object if you think that his wife killed him, chopped him up, put him into the fridge, and occasionally turned him into a curry. But that's, well, that's a possible interpretation. So what you can see from this is that this difference, because in English these words are not marked in any way grammatically, the difference between she made curry for him and she made him into a curry, in this sentence it could be understood either way. There's no way to tell. So of course you can have some misunderstanding, some ambiguity, or some jokes based on this in a way that in other languages is not possible, because these words would be marked somehow because of the role that they're playing. Okay. All right, so let's just move on to the third and final exercise. And again, this is the nature of this particular lecture, that there was a lot of stuff in it. There's a lot of stuff also in this exercise. So here we're looking at the classification of verbs: intensive, extensive, stative, dynamic, intransitive, ditransitive, monotransitive, or complex transitive. Okay. So if we look at the example, do you understand the question? Okay. This is an extensive verb because it doesn't have a subject complement. It's stative because we can't say, are you understanding? Right? And it's monotransitive because we have one object, which is the question. Okay? So similarly, if we look at the second one, English and German are different languages. Okay, so what the verb that we've got here, we're only interested in the verb. The verb that we've got here is are. Okay? So we know that the verb to be is intensive, right? It takes a complement. So different languages here, this is the subject complement, English and German being the subject. Okay? We couldn't say English and German are being different languages. When we use being in the dynamic form, in the continuous form, it always means that they are temporarily, right? So we can say something, stop being silly, stop being stupid to someone. When we say stop being stupid, we don't say that to someone who really is just all the time stupid. Someone who has a very low IQ. You can't just walk up to them and say, stop being stupid. How are they supposed to do that? When we say stop being stupid, we mean someone who's normally intelligent is messing about. So we can't use that form here. That would be something completely different. So this is clearly stative. Okay? And because it's intensive, because the verb to be takes a complement, it must be intransitive, right? Because it can't have an object. Okay. Number 3, he appeared rather worried. Appeared is another way of saying that he was rather worried. Okay, so this is also, just like the verb to be, this is an intensive verb. Okay. Again, we can't say he was appearing. If someone is appearing, we can say like an actor is appearing at the theatre, right? But that's something very different. So this is also stative. And because it's intensive, again, it will be intransitive. So 2 and 3 are both the same: intensive, stative, and intransitive. Okay. Number 4, the mist is disappearing slowly. So what you need to be careful with examples like this is to remember that the verb here is not is, the verb is disappearing. Okay. So the verb disappear does not take a subject complement, right? So we've got the mist is the subject, is disappearing is the verb, slowly is an adverb, obviously, so an adverbial. So what we've got here, is disappearing, is an extensive verb because there's no subject complement. It's obviously a dynamic verb because it's already in the continuous. And is there an object? The mist is disappearing slowly. No, there's no object. So it's also intransitive. Okay. Number 5, there are actually 2 verbs in here. I see what you mean. Okay, so the first one is, see, we've got see. So the subject is I, and then there's the verb see, and then the object is what you mean. This is extensive. Okay, there is no subject complement. We cannot say I am seeing what you mean, because see here means the same as understand. So this is stative. Okay. And what you mean, All of that is the object. It's one object, so it is monotransitive. Okay. But then we also have the verb mean, which will actually be analyzed in the same way. So we've got what you mean. Mean doesn't take a subject complement, so it is extensive. Also here, we don't say what you are meaning, right? That would be slightly strange. So it's also stative. The question then is there an object to mean? Well, there is. The object to mean is what? Right? You mean what? What you mean? So this is exactly the same. The two of them are exactly the same. They're both extensive, they're both stative, and they're both monotransitive. Okay. Number 6, he offered her his hand. He offered her his hand. That means that he, well, it could mean two things. It could mean that you need some help. She needed some help, so he held out his hand to help her. Or it could mean that he asked her to marry him. So if someone offers you their hand, you should be careful before you say yes. So he obviously is a subject here. So we're left with the verb offered. Okay. Offered doesn't take a subject complement, so it's extensive. Now, if we're talking about, well, I think in either sense probably of offered, we could say he was offering her hand. What was he doing at that moment? He was offering her his hand. It doesn't change the meaning of the verb offer if we put it into a continuous form. So although it's in the simple form here, it is a dynamic verb. Okay, so we've got extensive, dynamic. Then how many objects have we got? Well, we've got he offered her his hand. He offered his hand to her. So here we've got two objects. We've got his hand as a direct object and her as the indirect object. So this is ditransitive. Okay, so we've got extensive, dynamic, ditransitive. Okay, and then we've got the last two. So her mother made her that dress. Okay, so we've got the verb make, or made in this sense. Okay, there is no subject complement, so it's extensive. Okay. If we say her mother was making her that dress, again the meaning of make doesn't change here, so it's dynamic, even though it's in simple. And then we look for objects. Her mother made her that dress. Her mother made that dress for her. So again, we have two objects. So again, this is ditransitive. Okay. And the last one, we elected him president unanimously. Okay. So here we've got elected as the verb. Now, we elected him, so there is no subject complement here. There's no description of we, so it is extensive. If we were talking specifically about the process of voting, then we might be able to say that, well, it could be dynamic, we were electing him, but usually that's not how we mean elect. So probably we would accept that this is stative. So we need to then ask about transitivity. Well, we've got him and we've got president. So what does that tell us? Well, we elected him president. Him, this is a direct object of elected. So there is one object. So is it monotransitive? Well, no, it's not, because we've got president, and president is a description of him. So it's a complement of the object. Okay. If there is a complement to the object, then what we have is complex transitivity. Okay, so here we have extensive, stative, complex, transitive. Okay, as usual, if there are any questions about any of those, please feel free to get in touch and ask me, and I'll do my best to help you, but I hope that those explanations were clear enough. Okay, until next time, thank you.